Cameras caught Kirk Frost in a violent outburst that left Rasheeda crying and everyone in shock, in what is now considered to be one of the most breathtaking moments in love and hip-hop history. Nobody anticipated it, not even the crew or actors. Even though the leak happened during what was supposed to be a typical day of filming, just another scene between the long-term couple, something went wrong, voices were heard, and the story is already spreading like wildfire on social media, with fans demanding answers and producers desperately trying to control the narrative. The damage may already be done. Fans are now asking, what really happened behind the scenes? Was this a one-time outburst or a recurring incident? Following accusations, Kirk suddenly rushed towards Rasheeda in a way that nobody had anticipated from the man she had been seeing for years. This moment sent the internet into a frenzy. Have a look at something far darker. Despite the fact that Rasheeda has not made any public remarks, insiders claim that she is done. VH1 insiders, meanwhile, indicate that this scandal could jeopardize the franchise's whole future in addition to Kirk's. Kirk Frost arrived on the scene wearing a tight, visibly tense expression. The Love and Hip Hop set was buzzing with the typical controlled mayhem, with cameras in place and assistants rushing around making last-minute touch-ups, all under the blinding glare of the production lights. The revelation will leave you stunned. Everybody who knew Rasheeda could sense the emotion simmering just beneath the surface as she tried to maintain her composure while browsing through her phone. His jaw was clenched, and the whole crew could feel the cold air between them. The audience didn't know that Kirk had found private messages on Rasheeda's phone from her ranting to a friend about Kirk's most recent betrayal, right before the cameras started rolling. Though private, the texts were neither scandalous nor flirty. Kirk was fuming inside, but he stayed mute and simply went to his assigned seat on the set to wait for the play to begin. "I don't know how long I can act like this marriage is fine," he said. When the director called action, Kirk couldn't fake it and went on a tirade instead of following the script, which is how it feels to pretend for the cameras while dragging me behind my back. The scene they were supposed to film was a simple conversation about their son's school situation. "What are you talking about?" Rasheeda asked, her voice already breaking your little messages. "I saw it all," Kirk growled, and the crew froze, unsure. Rasheeda looked up in disbelief. It wasn't even close to what was in the script. Rasheeda's eyes widened as she stated, "He went through my phone." The tension was high, whether it was from intense acting or the actual events taking place in front of them. The air seemed thick. Kirk said, "Rasheeda, you've been making fun of me while smiling in my face, and I'm tired of phoning. Don't act like you're not guilty." Currently, the Rasheeda stood up when the director tried to cut the scene to signal a pause, but Kirk didn't stop. "I have to vent to someone, Kirk. I can't hold all of this in anymore." "You're never there," she sobbed, her voice trembling and her eyes full of tears. "I'm drowning because you lie and cheat." Those words sent Kirk over the edge, and no one saw the moment he raised his hand in one move. Then, in what appeared to be slow motion to all onlookers, his hand touched Rasheeda's cheek. The studio echoed with the sound of a hard smack, and then there were gasps as a clipboard was dropped. Astonished, Rasheeda stood with her face turned aside and one hand slowly raising to touch the spot where he hit her, and after a moment's silence, everything began. The assistant director summoned security, the crew hurried forward, and a sound technician promptly rescued Rasheeda and escorted her away. Kirk simply remained there, gasping for air and staring with wide eyes, as if he couldn't believe what he had just done, but it was irrevocable. As a result of astonishment, the cameras mistakenly kept rolling, documenting a historic occasion. An old cast member, Kirk Frost, was captured on film. After he hit his wife outside the set, news of his attack spread like wildfire. On video, Kirk punched Rasheeda after a crew member texted someone about a horrible incident that had just occurred. Social media was on fire within minutes. Even though nobody wanted to accept what they were hearing, the statements continued to come in, and Rasheeda's name was already popular when she was taken to her dressing room. Everybody told a different story, and none of them helped Kirk look good in the interim. In her dressing room, Rasheeda sat calmly, her cheeks red with makeup, and she stopped crying since her tears had dried up. Instead, she experienced an odd sense of relief and anger at being deceived, as if something she had been suppressing for too long had finally come to the surface. She said to her hairdresser, "He really did it. He really hit me." And in front of, a flurry of arguments broke out among the producers on what to do with everyone outside the entrance. While some argued that they needed to make a statement before the video leaked, others wanted to halt the entire production. But there was no doubt that this would not be kept a secret. They'd already recorded it on their phone, and the blurry phone footage would be the first thing to show up online, even if the network's cameras recorded it in high quality. Kirk had left the set with his shoulders rigid and his expression unreadable, but he had not spoken or provided an explanation. He didn't say anything. Even his manager just got into his car and left the next morning. A blurry, shaky, but undeniable video of Kirk Frost slapping Rasheeda was the first to surface online. His fans were furious and called for his termination, arrest, and cancellation as a personality. R&B singers started to voice their opinions. One rapper commented on Twitter, "I grew up watching them, and now I'm heartbroken." Even Moma Scott, another rapper, said, "It's disgusting. No excuse, no apology." It was rumored that Kirk had been suspended permanently, and some claimed that Bluewine was considering scrapping the season altogether. The executive producer of the program couldn't remain silent and sent a cryptic but clear message: "Violence has no place in our production choices." A few hours after Rasheeda's quiet was broken, she posted a single image of a black screen on Instagram without a statement. The response from her admirers was enthusiastic. "We love you. Leave him. You deserve better." The outside world was unaware that Rasheeda was battling a flurry of feelings within herself, such as shame, fury, sadness, and bewilderment. But the urge to speak up and offer her side of the story grew as love poured in. Everything had changed, but she wasn't sure if she wanted to remain married or press charges. Since the truth was now public knowledge, there was no turning back from the events on that set, which were only one aspect of a much larger, darker story that had been boiling behind closed doors for years. She and everyone around her were just getting started. As the world awaited Rasheeda's words, the world had already seen Kirk Frost's violent outbursts, and the fallout had just begun. But the damage was far worse behind the scenes than anybody had realized. Kirk's slap had resulted in more than just bruises. This was different. It wasn't simply drama for TV. People had seen them fight on screen before, surviving adultery scandals, emotional breakdowns, and endless rumor. Years of loyalty, trust, and quiet compromise were shattered by her cheat. Rasheeda sat alone inside her house. Her team had suggested that she take some time to heal and stay away from social media and the public, but the mending wasn't taking place. There was no denying that this was pure cruelty captured in the moment. It was much worse since it seemed like the world had finally seen what she had been keeping hidden for years. She was reminded of all the times she had pardoned Kirk, forgiven him, and stood up for him, even though she knew deep down that he wasn't deserving. Her cell rang. With friends, family, and co-stars texting all the time, everyone had something to say. While some were shocked, others were checking in. Too few, nevertheless, admitted that they weren't taken aback. A fellow cast member wrote in one message, "We've seen the wondering how long she had been waiting for things to become better." Rasheeda stared at that text for minutes. Signs for years. It was only a matter of time. Kirk was hiding in a friend's flat, away from the cameras and the chaos, and he hadn't called Rasheeda. So instead of saying sorry, he continued reenacting the scene in his head. She had convinced herself over and again that love entailed remaining across town. The reality was always clear, even when he tried to justify it by rephrasing it as a reaction rather than an attack, telling himself that she had provoked him, that she had gone too far, and that it had been an error. Mona Scott's phone rang. He didn't respond, and it rang again before a text message told him, "We need to talk. It's serious." Knowing the network was serious, Kirk put down the phone and began to pace the room. His reputation, what little he had left, was rapidly eroding, and he was furious that the video would be analyzed and that legal teams would be called in to draft statements. Meanwhile, the internet was in full swing as fans discovered old footage of Kirk. They looked at Rasheeda's body language and tone, and hashtags like #FireFrankFrost and #JusticeForRasheeda trended for hours. News publications even reported on the matter, calling it a reality TV scandal that turned into a real-life tragedy, and panel shows debated whether. Podcast hosts asked insiders who stated that was not the first time Kirk had become rude off camera, and Vuan should fire him. During all of this, one person quietly emerged into the spotlight, Rasheeda's mother, who is known for zealously protecting her daughter. "My daughter didn't hold back during an impromptu live session, speaking with fire in her eyes as I said, 'You can't build love on pain.' And now look, he put his hands on her. There isn't any coming back from that." As her comments echoed on social media like a war cry, fans rallied behind her, lauding her strength and calling her the voice Rasheeda needed right now. Rasheeda watched the video quietly, and it brought tears to her eyes, not because of what her mother said, but she hesitated, maybe out of love, fear, or something else, because she knew that she had ignored the warnings, her instincts, and the restless nights, all for a marriage that had become a prison and a spouse who had become a stranger. After all the years of supporting Kirk, she didn't know who she was without him. The network released a statement the next day, stating Vuan is aware of the situation between Kirk and Rasheeda Frost. "We do not condone violence in any form. Efforts are being taken to guarantee that despite corporate policies' nebulous protection of our cast's safety and well-being, supporters weren't satisfied and demanded Kirk's permanent removal." The show's management was in crisis mode as sponsors began taking their ads down. At last, Storm Kirk stood up, but he didn't apologize. Instead, he accompanied his story with a terrible video that only showed what the cameras could record. He initially came out as worn out and defensive. There are always two sides to a story. Many followers were outraged that he didn't apologize, even though I love my wife and never meant to offend her. It was said by one fan, "You just tried to save face." Another said, "Don't gaslight us. We saw the slap and the fear." Rasheeda chose to reply privately rather than publicly. Was getting ready. She was leaving the program entirely because she was tired of acting, lying, and carrying a story, and her team had contacted a lawyer to discuss her options. A divorce was a possibility. But as the days passed, a fresh twist emerged. Kirk was seen pacing irately backstage before the slap, raw, unedited tape was leaked, mumbling to himself, "I'm done playing the nice guy, and she's going to find out more now." The leak confirmed fans' suspicions that the slap was premeditated and intentional, as he spiraled long before the cameras caught it. Following this revelation, everything changed. Even those who had tried to support Kirk backed out, and other cast members started to remove themselves. Additionally, producers began reediting episodes so that Kirk appeared less frequently, and there are now whispers that he might be completely excluded from any future plots. And although she remained silent most of the time, Rasheeda's influence began to show in other ways, as she went live from her business and uploaded pictures of her children smiling while chatting with employees without bringing up Kirk. The world watched wondering, and Kirk was once a pivotal figure, but her message was clear: she wasn't broken. Still, there were questions about whether she would return to the program, face Kirk in public, or depart for good. The figure of love in hip-hop was alone, rejected, and unsure of if his empire would survive the fallout, as the dust had only begun to settle. But this was just the beginning, as Rasheeda's silence became louder with each post she made without. Her smiles without Kirk were seen as a sign of survival, but underneath those fleeting moments of strength, she was still dealing with the betrayal of a lifetime. While fans were appreciative of her strength, they were unaware of the nights she spent crying alone, the times she felt guilty about every decision she made, or the times she nearly picked the phone to call him, but she stopped herself. Meanwhile, Kirk's situation steadily worsened faster than he could cope, and the network stopped all of the filming that featured him. Brands that had previously backed him began to pull out, and some of his long-standing business partners quietly announced that they were reconsidering their roles. Their relationship with Kirk was deteriorating bit by bit, and no one was publicly standing up for him. But what hurt Kirk the most was not the losses to his company or the media's criticism, but Rasheeda's silence. He had anticipated that she would say something, maybe even. Kirk was unable to let go so easily in a last-ditch effort to keep control, but she didn't go live and yell his name into the emptiness. Instead, she just continued walking, which hurt worse in some ways. He noticed that she was no longer angry. He begged one of the show's producers for a sit-down, saying, "I need to tell my side. Let me explain before they cancel me for good." And the producer was reluctant because of the risks. But drama was money, and Kurt's desperation, rawness, and rejection were drama gold. A few days later, the cameras rolled again, but this time in a locked studio, and Kirk sat with his breath on his brow, his voice quivering as he began, "I grew up. I didn't think it would go," but he dabbed at his face and continued, "I never saw a healthy relationship around chaos, which may be why I make mistakes so frequently and messed up with Rasheeda." Other excerpts from the interview went viral, but instead of addressing the damage control that has been the content up to this point, it fueled a new flame that viewers saw through his words and characterized as performative manipulation. "He's not sorry for what he did. He's sorry he got caught," commented one fan, not in the way Kirk had hoped, and then a new voice joined the fray. When Kirk's oldest daughter from a previous relationship penned a strange account of how he'd been acting in this way, it was like opening a floodgate. Other family members, old friends, and even an old flame came forward, implying years of the mental instability, control issues, and toxic behavior that had been hidden behind the cameras for too long began to make sense as Rasheeda observed from a distance, with each new discovery feeling like a piece of a puzzle she had known was coming together. For years, she had carried guilt that wasn't hers, but now she was putting it all behind her. Kirk's image was reduced to ashes, but there were still people in the program trying to use subtle manipulation, gaslighting, and the way Kirk always found a way to shift blame to make money the moment a secret was revealed. When the producers got together to discuss making the drama into a special episode, they decided to have Rasheeda and Kirk compete in a broadcast showdown. The idea was great and the buzz would be unstoppable, but there was a catch. Rasheeda didn't want to be involved, so her team turned it down. The producers refused to back down and reached out to us once more with an offer of full editing rights, artistic control, and a hefty check. Rasheeda was torn since she wasn't prepared and didn't want to give Kirk a second chance. After days of consideration, she agreed, but only on the condition that Kirk would not know until the day of filming, both to keep her peace and because she knew that this might be her last chapter, a chance to end the story the way she wanted it to be. Expecting a solo segment, Kirk had mentally prepared lines to sound vulnerable, remorseful, and reformed. But when he walked onto the set and saw Rasheeda sitting calmly across from him, his mouth dropped open. She didn't even smile or greet him. She just waited until the camera started rolling. Attempted to speak first, but Rasheeda raised her hand and said quietly, "No, you said enough. Now listen. I gave you." Suddenly, there was silence in the room. At the start of her address, she firmly stated, "My love, devotion, and patience. Even when you didn't deserve it, I stayed in battle for us." What did you do? Kirk, you continuously hurt me and made me appear dumb. I was hurting too. Kirk attempted to interrupt, but she cut him off. But when the world saw what I've been dealing with, you were still unable to accept real responsibility and continue to play the victim. You don't get to injure me and then whine about your sorrow. Rasheeda waved around the set saying, "This is closure, not for you, for me." That's not love. That's control, and I'm done with it. Kirk's eyes were filled with tears, but Rasheeda held them. Even though the full film from that shot was never shown, only a few portions were made public, including a few sentences from Rasheeda and a few comments from Kirk. Even those fleeting moments shocked the fan base, who admired Rasheeda's strength and gave her the nickname. In what sounded like a farewell, perhaps, Kirk Frost fell silent again. But his team issued a final statement announcing that he would be removing himself from the spotlight to concentrate on personal development and healing. Women across the country shared their own breakups and moments of regaining control. The public had been given closure, but those closest to Kirk recognized that nothing had changed. And even after his statement was made public, the effects of his silence were still being felt. It was obvious that nothing would ever be the same again. Never truly at peace, he had distanced himself from the public, but the gossip continued behind closed doors. Kirk's family was in ruins, with his kids, particularly his oldest, caught up in the mess, and some of them felt sorry for their fathers. Others were more straightforward in their assessment, especially after seeing Rasheeda's victory. Kirk's past was now a burden. He was no longer just a man whose public persona was being inspected. His family was now impacted. His eldest daughter posted the mysterious post that said, "This isn't just about Kirk and Rasheeda anymore. It's about a family that's been broken, and how we pick up the pieces," was met with a barrage of comments. The media discovered a shocking rumor that someone in Kirk's inner circle had leaked a shocking story, so the drama wasn't over. While some fans expressed their worry for the children, others took the opportunity to criticize Kirk's parenting and demand that he be held accountable for the years of hardship his family had endured. Kirk had a lot of secret meetings with another reality star who had previously been very connected to the program, but the specifics were hazy. But it was clear that Kirk was preparing a big comeback and wasn't done fighting for his place on Love and Hip Hop just yet. Wildfire, and Kirk found himself in the spotlight again, but this time it wasn't with a moment of reflection or a genuine apology, but rather with the desperate attempt to regain what he thought he had lost. Rumors circulated that he was working with a former producer who had been fired from the show a few seasons ago. They were reportedly working on a new, much darker plotline that would portray Kirk in a completely different light. But for Kirk, the damage was already done, and despite his attempts to return and the growing volume of rumors, no one thought he could be saved. He was now the antagonist in the story. In reality television, villains seldom get second chances, and Rasheeda's life was taking a totally unexpected turn after the confrontation on the show, when she started getting offers from brands that had previously distanced themselves from her on social media. As she became more well-known, she began to talk more about her personal journey, her rise in the industry, her struggles, and how she had finally learned to prioritize herself. People came together to support her, and her fan base grew every day, bringing with it a sense of freedom she hadn't felt, and fans began to pay attention, and other celebrities began to offer their support as well. Several celebrities came out to Rasheeda in private to offer their friendship, support, and condolences. Some even commented on how incredible it was to watch her not just survive but flourish despite everything. However, behind the scenes, Rasheeda was being pushed in multiple directions by deals, media appearances, and family. After the floodgates opened, people began to see her not only as a reality TV star, but also as a woman who had endured enough adversity to tell her own story of fortitude. She was a different woman, someone stronger, and despite her exhaustion and the days when she wanted to shut off the noise, she was unable to do so after everything she had been through. She was no longer the woman who had sobbed in silence, hoping her husband would change. She had periods of weakness even after regaining her power, and in the weeks following the broadcast showdown, she wondered if Kirk would ever truly face the repercussions of his actions and if she could handle the weight of her own news story. According to reports, Kirk's team had been in talks with the network to promote the concept that his tale was far from complete, and rumors that the producers were considering Kirk for a spin-off series that would only focus on his redemption arc intensified. Didn't have it, so she told her management and the network that she was done if Kirk came back in any significant way. "I'll walk away before I let him drag me back into that toxic mess," she said in a private meeting with her team. Her decision wasn't just directed at Kirk, though. It was also for her own health and the network's good. "I know I've messed up. I know I've hurt you, but if there's even a small chance to rebuild what we had, I'm willing to do whatever it takes," Kirk wrote on social media in an attempt to boost his reputation, despite the fact that she was making decisions for herself for the first time in a long time. "You mean more to me than anything, and I will try for the rest of my life to make it right." Rasheeda had discovered the hard way that words were cheap acts, and she didn't even acknowledge the post. Kirk's words were just another attempt to dominate the narrative, another round of hollow promises. Mattered, but just when everything seemed to be settling down, a close friend of Kirk's who had been by him through the entire incident revealed something shocking. Kirk had been seeing someone else while he was married to Rasheeda. Kirk attempted to recover what was left of his public image, but it was too late. All of his lies and betrayals had finally caught up with him, and he was no longer able to break free from his past as Kirk's world continued to. His private life was suddenly completely visible to the public after his disastrous attempt to repair his public image. The news of his affair rocked the entertainment business, and many started screaming. Fans who had previously backed Kirk turned against him, calling him a liar, a coward, and a manipulator, and his social media pages were flooded with angry comments as even the most loyal supporters began to question whether he deserved a second chance after the controversy. He made multiple attempts to get in touch with Rasheeda, including sending her flowers, writing long letters of apologies, and even paying her a surprise visit, but each time it seemed futile. Rasheeda refused to meet with him because she had already listened to his justifications, and they sounded hollow this time since she had finally come to terms with Kirk's inability to supply the kind. She had established a new life for herself that no longer required the commitment she was due, no longer displayed his toxic influence. Rasheeda's decision to break off contact with Kirk was strengthened when she was given unexpected support when her mother, who had never trusted Kirk, sat down with her. "You've been through enough, my dear, and no guy is worth the pain he has caused you. That's what I told you." In fact, she was the one who woke Rasheeda up. She didn't need Kirk's excuses or guarantees that she needed the same amount of peace, power, and independence as Kirk's. As the public's opinion of him declined, attempts at reconciliation became increasingly desperate, and the world's reality had. His dramatic premise was first accepted, but producers from Love and Hip Hop said that Kirk will no longer appear on the show in any meaningful way. Hence, his death was final. And he was left desperately attempting to rebuild his damaged career, while Kirk's staff continued in. In addition to his homecoming plan, a new series was purportedly in the works, a documentary-style show that would pursue his atonement quest. It sounded too sweet to be true, and many perceived it as merely another conscious effort to highlight his flaws. Kirk's group insisted that making money wasn't the sole objective. It was about proving to the public that he could transform into the person he professed to be. But the reality was, he had clearly declined too much, and the people had become disinterested in his sob story. Rasheeda's business ventures were flourishing while Kirk's career was faltering, remained successful and sought after for high-profile collaborations, turning into a symbol in the process. A woman who had persevered through a bad relationship and emerged stronger. Her tale resonated more than ever with millions of followers, many of whom had gone through. By sharing her path of self-love with people who had encountered similar difficulties in their own lives, Rasheeda used her platform to inspire others. She was a beacon of light for women who had been abused because of her independence and empowerment, showing them that they could regain control and change their lives. But Kirk had served as the franchise's spokesperson, but his fan base on social media had faded into obscurity. Diminished as the public's interest in him waned, and his pathetic attempts to stay relevant as he clung to his once promising career turned into a cautionary tale as he revisited the past with every post and public statement. Reminder of how quickly fame may vanish if dedication and confidence were violated. In an attempt to salvage what little of his reputation he still had, Kirk posted, he shared an emotional and repentant video on social media. He acknowledged his mistakes, apologized for Rasheeda's pain, and pledged to do better, but again his words were insufficient. Flat, his fans had seen this side of him far too frequently, and they weren't buying it anymore. Viewers' reactions to the video were a mixture of sympathy and skepticism, with some voicing their disillusionment and others simply ignored his story and moved on. Kirk, it was hard to believe that no matter how many times he apologized or promised to improve things, his actions had outshone his words because he had violated the trust of Rasheeda and their family. Never fully recovered, he had lost his spouse and his career, his reputation and status in the reality TV sector, while Rasheeda was making more robust and intelligent advancement. And more determined than ever, she continued to push past the drama and forget about Kirk and his falsehoods. After a while, new controversies and real-life celebrities took the place of the media's focus on their broken marriage. Tub World, however, Rasheeda had learned a valuable lesson: never settle for less. Harsh actions speak louder than words, and Kirk discovered that you get more than you deserve. Louder than words? And that atonement isn't always achievable in the end, hurts. Rasheeda's violent tirade was merely a single incident in a much longer story of betrayal, public humiliation, and the end of a once dominant reality. When the dust settled, one thing became clear, and Kirk may have had his. Rasheeda won because she had taken charge when she was in the spotlight. Her narrative showed the world that she could succeed in any situation and turned her hardship into strength. Kirk Frost's emotional roller coaster and shocking outburst. It's clear that Rasheeda came out stronger despite everything, even though we are all in shock over her subsequent fall, further showing us what true resilience looks like. Do you think Kirk will ever completely change his life, or has eventually his past came up with him? We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments area below. Is Kirk's career over, or do you think he might make a comeback? If not, don't. Remember to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more exciting celebrity news drama, the latest news from the actual world today, and as usual, turn on alerts. To ensure you don't miss any stories that are disrupting the entertainment sector, watch for the next video when we go into more detail. The drama is far from done as we examine the incident's repercussions in further detail and make predictions for Kirk and Rasheeda's future. From over, so listen carefully.